Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I have Phoenix Muranetz with me, and Phoenix is a unification architect, sacred ceremony designer, performer, and writer. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
I'm excited to have you here. Just before we hit record, I let Phoenix know that I'm in Arizona, not that far from Phoenix. I love your name. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So your job description is very unusual.
Yes, it is.
I would love to hear the story behind it, how you arrived at this, and what it actually means. I mean, performer and writer, I understand that. The unification architect and sacred ceremony designer, I have never met anyone with that on their bio before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's not something I chose like years ago when I was like plotting my career choice and my career journey. And it's really interesting because I've always been like a performer. As a child, I was in the performing arts. I was in singing. I was very outspoken. I was always on stages. And I went through school and I was really involved with like arts and visual art. And I guess it would have been like after high school, I was really lost as to what I was supposed to do because I was passionate about the arts. But the message that I got reinforced into me at a young age was that you can't go and make a career in the arts because it's too hard. You won't make money. And it's not what adults do. And so I was like, taking all of that in and then very confused once I graduated high school about what I should be doing. So I ended up actually going to art school for a couple of years after like a huge journey of awakening and self-discovery. And in the process, I got married and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this as an artist. I can't make my life's work in the arts, right? I need to be a provider. I need to, be responsible. And so I went into architecture. I studied like, math and like, physics and like velocity speeds against buildings and like all this stuff that to me was just super boring. And it was actually during the process of going to architecture and studying all of this stuff that I went to Burning Man. And I really saw that, yes, arts, the arts is my thing. And there was a deeper meaning behind my work. And so like through journeys with plant medicines, with ayahuasca and, getting divorced and then, really discovering like, what, I'm here to do this kind of work. And my artistic work is so much more than just shallow, stuff that you hang on walls. It's actually about bringing people together and unifying people through creative, heart-opening, transformative experiences that's when I really like stepped into my flow. And I mean, in the last 2 years of my business, we've grown it to multiple six figures. And that's when I really opened up to working with God as my co-creator. And that's when my whole business just started booming.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. Revelation through Burning Man. You're not the first person that I've heard have massive revelations at Burning Man. Actually, I recently read a book that was called Stealing Fire. Have you read this book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet. No.
It's worth a read. It's really interesting. It's basically about the ways man's journey to explore the furthest reaches of our own brains, basically like our mental capacity, flow, these times when we get into these sort of altered states. And they kind of go through all the different ways of doing them, some of which are, meditation, yoga, things that take many years. And then they have, extreme sports like base jumping off of rocks into canyons and holes in the ground, stuff like that. And then they had drugs was another way. And they followed some tech startup people to Burning Man and talked about their experiences there and microdosing LSD and kind of all these ways of people trying to access these really heightened states of mental activity where we can really innovate and bring in new ideas and new ways of doing things. And they did talk about Burning Man just being this amazing space in which people come together with very limited means, but create amazing things in the course of a couple days, building all these structures and vehicles and all this stuff happens in this very like kind of extreme space because there's really not even water, right? I mean, you did the one in Nevada, is that right?
Yeah,
on the playa.
I mean, it's like this container where there's not a lot of rules. And so, I think for most of us, we grew up and we went to like a traditional school system. And, Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk talks about how schools have actually, they're designed to breed creativity out of people. And the reason being was like the origins of school were actually designed to train factory workers.
Industrial Revolution. Yeah.
Totally. And so, a lot of people are afraid of tapping into their own creative potential because there's so much fear around like getting in trouble, like if you didn't like fall within the confines of what was set out for you, you would end up in detention, you'd like fail your classes, you were told that you'd be a failure. And so there's like this ingrained fear around exploration of our own creative genius. And so a lot of my work and the work that I do through my events is really creating the safe spaces for people to really explore the edges of their sexuality and their creative genius and to really tap into like their mythic archetype.
That's right. I think orgasm was another way to expanded states of mind. Oh, and then they also had neurofeedback. That was another one. Now technology is getting into like how to make your brain go these interesting places. But not to get too distracted by the book. Obviously, that's an aside. But that's kind of pretty exciting, actually. I feel like I totally agree. I have kids with special needs who really struggle with school. And there have been times when I've been kind of reading up on unschooling and these ideas of what use is this, especially my older daughter who's significantly affected by autism, has a white blood cell disorder. Her life is pretty different from anyone who would end up being a factory worker of any kind, I'm like, how much is she getting from this experience at school? What is this doing for her future life? And I'm not sure. I'm still in question about that.
Yeah. And I think too, like even for ourselves, if we can look at like, how have we stepped away from exploring our creative genius and how can we create more experiences that give us the freedom to explore that? And especially as like entrepreneurs who have teams, it's like, how can you create spaces for people to explore their own creative genius and their own zone of genius in your company, right? For your employees, your staff, your teams. So this is stuff that I find really fascinating. I think it's like at the forefront of a lot of conversations that major tech entrepreneurs and innovators in this space are really starting to explore is how can we really step outside of the box, like really like embody outside of the box and create that space for others.
Yeah, that's an amazing idea. I think rather than like trying to take employees and slot them into, these little narrow confines, like figuring out how to make the best use of everyone's talents and personalities and, everything that they bring to the table and not just like cut off whole parts of people in their jobs.
Totally. Yeah. And we've actually been innovating some interesting concepts into our own company here is that we're actually looking at some kind of blockchain form of organization where attendees that come can then become members of our community. So then, at future events, they can become affiliates. They can actually earn money from sharing with their friends. And it's like this organic growth process where it's actually this movement, that then spreads across the world. So we're starting to look into how to create chapters and how to really empower others to take this kind of like Burning Man where, you've seen this movement spread and really grow. And now they have Burning Man regionals all over the world, right?
Yeah, there's actually one that's here in Flagstaff and it's on a neighboring ranch to where my husband and I used to ranch out. We ranched for 14 years outside of Flagstaff. And, but it was always kind of a mess because they would do things like stop the road, which actually, we have legal access through the road. So they would like stop our cowboys and try to charge them money. And we'd be like, no. And the cowboys were like the cowboy culture and Burning Man culture don't quite
like me.
Yeah. The cowboys were always annoyed when the Burning Man festival would come out there. So tell me about this movement then. What is it called? What name do you have for the movement?
Well, yeah. So like 2 years ago, I just had my baby and I think it was right before I gave birth to her. I had this really incredible experience of, I launched a bunch of businesses and none of them worked out. Like they just kept on failing and failing and failing. And, they say like, a successful entrepreneur has many failed companies behind them. Right. And so I'd been like investing, pouring my all into these other companies, like a clothing startup, a travel company, a corporate business company that, did transformation. And just none of them seemed to be working out. So finally I just like got on my hands and knees and I was like, God, goddess, I'm here. Like, just, you know what? I'm going to stop just trying to do what I think I need to do. And I'm just going to open myself up as a vessel, just to you, to spread love on this planet. And literally through that, like in 2 weeks, I got this major download. I had my daughter and I was speaking at this event in Vancouver, and I got this major download that like, I'm supposed to create this space for women to come together and really explore the edges of their creative expression and sisterhood and their sensuality. And the name came through of Awakened Woman. This name came through. And so within the span of a year, we put together this event in Bali. We had speakers like Eve Ensler come on board. We had Alexi Panos, Mastin Kipp, from, he's been on Oprah a couple times. We had like all these speakers just like flood in, and we had women from around the world fly in for this event. And it was really powerful. It was really, really powerful. And from that, now this year, we've branched into inviting men this year. And so this year's theme, it's actually going to be in Arizona, because Arizona is a very sacred spot that, it's near Hopi territory. It's kind of in the space of like, the sacral chakra, So this year our theme is around awakened sexuality, radical creative expression, and spiritual unification. So we're actually inviting men and women, and there's going to be like workshops around, deepening intimacy in your partnership, stepping into sacred masculine, so workshops for men where they can actually come together in brotherhood, workshops for just women where they get to come together in exploring their sensuality as women and supporting one another, right? Because we're moving out of this era of like where women compete with each other for attention to like supporting one another and like celebrating like, fuck yeah, there's this amazing sexual, beautiful goddess. Celebrate her, right? Instead of feeling like disempowered and feeling like our own light has to dim, So we're going to be talking a lot about that, but then we also are really addressing like some really deep issues around Indigenous sovereignty and like repairing the relationships between settlers and Indigenous people. Because, we really realize that like we're going to Arizona. It's actually like unceded territory of like the Hopi, the Apache, the Navajo, a bunch of other different tribes. And I'm sure they're not honored or recognized beyond tokenism that often, right? So we're actually working at creating relationships with them to bring them in and have their voices be heard. What do they really need and want, right? Acknowledging, honoring them, and apologizing on behalf of our ancestors.
Yeah, there's still a lot of leftover stuff for sure. Actually, just last week, I write for a local paper here, and I was writing a feature on an artist named Shanto Begay. And when we were doing his story, he, as a child, was kidnapped and taken to an off-reservation boarding school where he was not allowed to speak his language, do any of his ceremonies or rituals, acknowledge his own religion in any ways. He was forcibly converted to Christianity. And I was kind of stunned. I mean, I knew that happened at some point, but somehow I thought it was like further back in time. I thought it was another generation. I didn't think there were still people who, it was kind of like, I guess, World War II, thinking like there are only so many people left as our population ages. I didn't think we were still that close in time to it. And it was a horrible story. I mean, he was horribly abused, and he has responded with the most beautiful art. And he's an activist. He went to protest DAPL and do all these things. It was so interesting talking to him about his response to real disenfranchisement and violence against him and his people in so many ways. And yeah, it's still fresh for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think, I know here in Canada, like we have the beginnings of like reconciliation, where at a lot of events, like we'll say we're on the unceded territory of whatever tribe that land is on. But I think we've been waiting for our governments and our politicians and people in power to, start the conversations. And we're realizing that it has to start with us. And I think too, it's releasing so much inherent shame in the collective as well, right? Like people don't even realize that they have this shame around like how their ancestors treated their ancestors. And I think it's just part of making things right on the planet. Like we can't really expect to have a healthy, thriving planet and like live in this amazingness and without acknowledging and honoring this. And so it's so interesting. Like I never thought that my work would turn into this and that I'd be inviting people into these conversations of like healing and releasing and opening. And it's because I've been aligning with Great Spirit's message that like things have just been flowing, you know, like things are just opening up. And that's kind of my message for everyone that's listening is like, if you're finding blocks in your business or you're finding that things aren't flowing, it's like, connect with spirit and ask like, how is your work really connected with the great directive of the planet? And how can you align more to that, you know?
Do you mind if I ask a little bit about your perception or vision of spirit, God, goddess?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it differs a lot country to country, kind of what those words mean, as well as like, you know, different segments of different populations. So what does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, like from the time I was like 12, I've had a very deep connection to understanding this question. You know, like when I was 12, I used to like align my chakras and like astral travel and like, you know, hear angels and like all this kind of crazy stuff that happened. And
how did that come into your life when you were 12?
My grandmother, actually, she used to be a white witch, you know, here in Canada. And so she had this whole vast library of like books on spirituality and like chakras and energy. And I just remember like pouring through these books as a child and, you know, doing meditations and like opening up my chakras. And I had a lot of very interesting experiences of like traveling to other planets and like meeting extra dimensional beings. And I think because I didn't have a proper mentor, I shut it down. And so it wasn't until I was 23 that then things really opened up again because I was ready. So what I've understood is that, you know, it's kind of like I think of like a dandelion, you know, like there's all the little pieces of a dandelion and that whole dandelion is Great Spirit. And we're like one little piece of that dandelion, if that makes sense. So like we're a part of Great Spirit. And when we're operating with the best intentions for the whole, instead of just like our own egoic like visions, you know, things align better, you know, synchronicities happen more and developing that connection and that trust, right? So honoring like the sacred masculine part of ourselves and also honoring the sacred feminine, right? You know, they're also connected too. It's all one part, but it's, you know, understanding where you fit into the whole of the universe.
So for you, it's relatively non-denominational then, not a specific religion that you fall into?
No, I mean, all religions, I think it's like they're all part of the same, it's just like a different interpretation. It's like a different ice cream flavor of the same thing. You know, ice cream is ice cream. There might be 1,000 different flavors of ice cream, but at the end of the day, it's still ice cream, right? So, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to check that out because that word has not been used a whole lot on the show, you know, God. So I think it's always good to figure out what people mean by it because people do mean very different things sometimes. So.
Yeah. And I love that, like I think we're starting to see more conversations around how do you imbue spiritual understanding in your business, right? You know, because I see business as actually being like a spiritual mission. You know, when we can operate our businesses from that perspective, it's like you just experience so much more synchronicity and you don't have to work as hard, right? When you're working with Great Spirit, you're like, hey, you know, how much bigger should I build my movement? Or like, how can I connect this to like the overall grand mission? Spirit will give it to you, like in ideas, in like synchronicities and business opportunities. And then you're like furthering, it's like connecting to your big why, right? A lot of people, I don't think, really understand what their big why is in their business. Oh, I want to make $100 million, or like, you know, I want to capitalize on this underserved market. That's great. And like, what's your big why, right?
Well, I do feel like with more and more women entering the business space, which is really flourishing. I mean, women starting their own businesses and working outside of traditional job structures and corporate job structures seems like the thing right now. Like so many of us are doing it for so many different reasons. I mean, some because it wasn't flexible enough for caregiving, some because of aging parents needing to move, some just got downsized. But I feel like a lot of us are doing that now.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of being able to attach that to something bigger than just ourselves, I feel like that's particularly attractive to women, kind of like the socially responsible investing. Like as women put more and more money into retirement accounts in the stock market, I feel like they're having to respond to our desire to not invest in things that we're morally opposed to. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good place to feel our own power, is that we are influencing these things.
Oh, big time, big time. And seeing how business is changing too, with how women do business, it's a lot of times very different from men. You know, like in my business, like high touch is really important to us. So like, you know, reaching out with personalized emails to each person that's attending our events, you know, sending them gifts in the mail, you know, like these kinds of things, that people that come are not just like a number, you know, or they're not just like a dollar sign in our mind. It's like actually they're part of like our growing tribe, you know, our community. Like last year, all these women came together, and now like they're speaking on stages and they're developing joint ventures and like deepening the relationships, right? So that's really,
well, that's exciting.
yeah.
So if someone does want to come to one of your events, let's talk about the events and what they can expect to experience there.
Yeah, well, this year it's going to be held in Scottsdale at the Hyatt Regency in Arizona, and it's October the 12th to the 15th, and it's really beautiful.
Best time to be in Arizona, by the way. October. I planned my wedding around October 20th in Arizona in the desert because it's so nice then. It's like, yeah, best time of year. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
It's like warm, it's not sweltering, it's really beautiful, and yeah, it's going to be really amazing because we are bringing in, you know, a lot of Indigenous representatives. So we're going to be having like an Indigenous panel sharing their wisdom in spirituality and what is their message and what are the things that they want to share. But then we're also really empowering like those that are like light workers or conscious entrepreneurs. We're empowering them with these really incredible workshops on, you know, how to speak from stage and get more clients, you know, how to really grow your online empire. We have Lewis Howes, who's one of our keynote speakers. You know, he was just on the Today Show. He's going to be coming and sharing a lot of his wisdom on how he grew his like multi-million-dollar online business, you know. But then we also have entrepreneurs who are really rocking it and who are conscious culture creators. So these are like YouTube stars that have built online businesses from just doing, you know, channels on spirituality, right? But then a big key part of that too is like if you're afraid of sharing yourself or exploring your creative expression, like that's where you find the juice and the gold in your business. So we have all these workshops designed to like also express yourself really, really radically. We have a facilitator coming from Australia, and she's teaching this course called Dancing Arrows. And like her courses are like thousands of dollars, you know? And it's all these women that get together in a room and they're like dancing the sacred slut dance, you know, like they're getting into their sexual mojo and power. And what happens when we tap into that place as women and we release the shame, like our business will automatically reflect how we feel about ourselves. Right. So when we're really tapping into that, it's the same with, you know, I talk about the connection between pussy and profits, right?
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, when you tap into like, because the sacral chakra, right, which is like, you know, it's in your vagina, it's in your pussy, it's you know, located in that region. When you're tapping into that energy of like sexual expression, you allow it to flow, profits will naturally flow because that's your creative energy space, right? And money is just creation, right? Whatever you put out into the world, you get back. So if you're putting out your most sexually alive and empowered and like wild self in service, and also just because it feels good, you're going to get all of that back in green energy, which is money. So the more like women, like I see women all the time that open up like their sexual chakra, that are opening up to their pleasure and their desire. And then they're also able to receive, right? Because as women, we're designed to receive. You know, when you look at our anatomy, a lot of women are so used to operating their business from like a masculine perspective, where it's all about like push and grind and you know, they're operating from penis energy a lot of time. That's what I call it, like yang energy. And when it's not balanced, they find that they're putting out a lot of energy into the world, but then they're not able to receive. profit. They're not
interesting.
able to receive clients. And so like understanding how to step in and balance your business through aligning and balancing your feminine energy in your business is huge, huge for women.
So besides the sacred slut dance, what other sort of workshops work on that, the pussy and profit area of things?
Yeah, we have one workshop that's called the Yoni Temple. And so this is for couples where men learn how to really honor and adore their partner's yoni through, you know, creating an altar out of her vagina, through how to honor and really worship that, right? Because it's also for men, when they start to soften in how they honor and worship the feminine, right? Like it's also resetting the nervous system, because if we're feeling really content and happy in our relationships and in how we operate with the masculine, it's like it just naturally, everything else sinks into balance. And that's what we need more of in our leaders, right? Like these are under appreciated aspects of awakened leadership, which is like the overarching theme this year, is like, how do we really embody awakened leadership? You know, I'm sure in the States, like there's a lot of contentious political stuff happening because you see the country run by a guy who proclaims that he, you know, kind of sexually abuses women. So, and it's considered.
He likes to grab them by their yonis.
Yeah. So, you know, it's really about how do we reset our nervous system to like really honor and appreciate the feminine, right? Because that's what really needs to come into balance in the world. And so, you know, we have workshops around that. We have all these major ceremonies that are happening. We have speakers that are going to be talking on like Agape Stassinopoulos, her and her sister Ariana Huffington. You know, they talk a lot about the unbridled heart. So Agape is going to be talking at Awakened Woman about how we can really open up our hearts and our business and our lives so that we can really like shine more authentically and move beyond fear, right? How do you move beyond fear of like reaching multi-million dollars in your business to being the message, you know? Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a great lineup. You have a lot of fantastic people.
Oh yeah, we have like over 15 speakers over the 4 days. We have around 20 workshops that are all included in the conference pass. We have amazing menu that's figured out. And then you get a chance to meet all of these amazing speakers and performers. We also have a Lucent Dossier, which are like Cirque du Soleil on LSD.
Wow.
And then we also have Dea Dova, who's an Australian singer. She's amazing. She's going to be doing, so we have like nightly, you know, musical performances and celebrations. We have morning raves, you know, to get people out of bed and happy. And yeah, it's just, it's really profound. So for like those that are wanting to like step up in their business, step up in their life as an awakened leader for millions, you know, this is like the place to be for that, right?
Well, great. So if someone is not coming with a partner, will they not be able to participate in some of the couple
no
workshops?
No.
Anyone can go?
Although I will say that if I was a man, I would be like booking my ticket now, because if you're a single man and there's going to be like hundreds of other single amazing women, like just putting that there, guys.
You know, actually someone said that at an event I was at in April in San Diego. Someone was like, if there were more single men in this room, this would be like such a prime place.
Totally. Yeah.
That's true. I feel like a lot of women go to a lot of these events.
Yeah.
So my audience is mainly women, but if any men are listening, you may want to go book your ticket right now and get in on all of this.
And
as well as women.
It's so inclusive too. Like we have workshops that are going to be talking about like moving beyond binary understandings of this too as well. Like, because you know, so many of my friends are lesbian, they don't identify with any gender, you know, they're gender fluid. So, you know, it's open to really any kind of orientation in this. Yeah.
Well, that's good. We need more inclusiveness everywhere, I think, especially right now. So many things, especially politically, when you're mentioning politics, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if we should even go there. It's so frustrating and difficult right now, but there's so much divisiveness with all over the world right now. I mean, I feel like
it's a blessing.
I think it's a blessing. Maybe all of it's, I've heard people talk about it being kind of like when you boil the minerals or something and all the kind of crud comes up to the surface so you can scrape it off. I was like, I would like to think that's true, that we're getting rid of like, you know, the worst stuff that's boiling up right now. But but it does feel frustrating to see. Yeah. Anyways, which is probably exactly why we need very positive events like this going on.
Yeah, well, it's this chance. I think we've been waiting around for other people to step up and take the stage for us as a collective. And what it's showing us is like, we need to step up as the awakened leaders. It's really time for us to stop waiting for others. You know, that Hopi, I think it's a Hopi saying, it's, you know, we are the change that we've been waiting for. Right? Like we've been waiting for change, but actually we're the ones that need to step up. And so when you have a community like what we're cultivating that really witnesses you in the transformation of like you stepping and owning your power and stepping up as a leader, holy fuck, is that powerful, right? Because you can't do it alone, right? We can't do this work alone, and we need to come together as a community. So this is why it's so powerful to have these kinds of containers. And like, Burning Man's amazing. I'm still a big Burner fan. But this one has the feeling and elements of Burning Man with like the structure of TED, you know, where you still have these illuminating talks and you still have these amazing workshops, but then there's a lot of space for creative expression.
Well, and I think that there's some people that parts of Burning Man wouldn't appeal to that this would. For instance, when I was reading that, the Stealing Fire book, I was like, I love the idea of testing out microdosing LSD, but I'm a mom and I don't really want to get arrested. You know, like I'm not going to go do drugs at my age with kids, and you know. So I was like, so obviously, I in my mind that's not an option, but I would like to experience these heightened states of mental flow and bliss and creativity. Like I want to access the highest, best part of my own brain. And
totally.
But also like, meditating for, you know, hours a day for years, like that's just such a long trek. But I'm also not going to jump off of the side of a canyon right now either. So it was funny kind of like going through all of those options of what we can do. But they were talking also when you do come together in a group, how often just that synergy that, you know, there really is something called group think, and when minds come together, you can come up with ideas that you never would have come up with completely separately. That's the whole reason for think tanks and these organizations and stuff, bringing creative minds together. So that's pretty amazing too. Maybe it's another way to access something a bit beyond ourselves. It's just getting together with like-minded people who have different perspectives and points of view.
And then having that continue too, like, and that's the beauty that we've really looked at embedding is like a lot of time. I've been to like tons of conferences. I'm sure you've been to like a ton of conferences where you go, you're totally blown open, and then you never see any of those people again. You don't stay in contact with any of them. And it's like, because then you go back and then there's no integration, right? Like there's no understanding of like how you kind of almost like crash, right? Because you go back to default world and you're like, how do I keep that energy and that like inspiration high in order to integrate it into my daily life and then really transform things? And I noticed that was really missing, the continuation. So we've really ingrained that in like creating, we have online circles now where those that like have been part of last year, they then get to continue that support by having like sister circles or brother circles, you know, where they're then still staying in contact and still supporting one another. And that's like really critical to like then, because you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on this amazing experience only to like, then you're like, okay, now I'm back to being me again, you know?
Yeah. I actually kind of had that earlier this year. Well, I thought about it. They gave us, so I went to the 90-day year, which is, it's kind of like a high performance one. And I met a lot of people that I've known online for a while who also came. But I had this notebook that they gave me. It was a branded notebook. I took so many notes. I wrote people's names in it. I took notes about like what we talked about. I lost the notebook. And I got home because I didn't really even take, we're not really in that business card world anymore. Like I don't even own a business. I've never made a business card. But we'll like maybe take a picture of our name tag with our face. We'll be like, okay, now I'll definitely know you, who you are, or whatever. We're trying to have these ways of being connected, and losing that notebook. I was just like, that was all the good, like I was counting on my notebook to bring all the good stuff home with me. And then I won't say, I'm completely unchanged. There was great stuff that happened, but yeah, it did feel like, oh, now it's over. And
yeah. And how do you keep that, like that tribe, right? And so that's like so important, right? When I think, and that's just like the next level of conscious business too. It's like, Actually, I have a couple books that are coming out in the next couple years around like conscious business, around like, because I consider myself a futurist, you know, and everyone's really investing in like high tech, right? But you know, if you're in kind of our industry, coaching, if you're in all of this stuff, it's like the most high touch you can make your company, like just thinking through, what do people really need? What do we really need? We want family. We want family. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. Like that's what people really want. So how can you create the experiences that people can feel safe enough to really be heard, to really be seen, beyond like, hey, like, give me a call, I run a business. But, you know, it's like, I want to see beyond that, you know? So like this year, I'm going to be launching a project called the Library of Human Experience. And it's this art installation where people get to read other people's journals anonymously.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, imagine if you got to read my journals, but you didn't know they were my journals. You got to read like the uncensored, raw, unfiltered parts of myself without knowing who I was. You know?
That makes just the idea makes me nervous. I do 750words.com every morning as my morning pages. I don't know if you've heard of that website, but it archives it all for you. There is a small cost, but you know, because they have to have a server. And I've put more than 2 million words on there in the last 6 years.
Wow.
And I was suddenly like, oh my God, what if someone read that? But that's part of it. Is, you know, it's in there, but it's safe. Only you can access it if you want, and you can delete it all if you want to. But I was like, I do a lot of ranting in there. I do a lot of like just blah, you know, getting things out, which is what I think most of us do in journals. But most of us write journals knowing they won't be read or hoping they won't be read. So
yeah, and that's the thing, right? But what if like, you would have so much more compassion for the human experience and other people, and that's really, you know, what we're cultivating. So I'm excited. Like that's a whole company that's launching later this year. So
that's fascinating, though. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah.
I think so often when we see the shiny surface of people, we can't relate. But if we knew what was happening to them, if we knew their father had kids, or if we knew they were going through divorce, if we knew, you know, they'd lost a child, or if we'd known the things that most of us keep from our public profile, we would all have a lot more compassion and empathy for each other.
Have you read Glennon Doyle Melton's Love Warrior book?
No,
like, I mean, she just blew up in the last couple of years, and she's been on Oprah like quite a few times. And her book is like the darkest, dirtiest shit of what happened in her life as like a bulimic and a former alcoholic. And it's like so moving. You're just like riveted, right? Because she does not hold back at all. She just shares it all. And you have so much compassion and love, and you're like, wow, you could actually share that. Because I think even most authors, when they're sharing like their memoirs, they're definitely like the polished, cleaner versions of, you know, what's actually happening, right? So,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's really exciting. We'll have to put we'll put links to your event, and this project is future project. There's no link for it yet.
It's going to be launching at Awakened Woman this year. So people want to, you know, come to Awakened Woman and then bring a journal to contribute. They'll be able to access the other journals that are there. So
that's really interesting. Is it going to be online, or do you have to actually go and read the handwritten journals?
Our website will be launching next year. So we're actually going to be launching a whole book series and online repository membership site. So, but people can only access other people's journals if they contribute their own journal anonymously.
That's a good rule. Yeah.
So.
Put some skin in the game there.
Totally. To be vulnerable, to read other people's vulnerabilities. So,
yeah. I like that. That's pretty exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I have learned so much about you. It's been great.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in Arizona. That'd be really great to connect and meet up. And
yes, absolutely. I'll bring a journal.
Awesome.
Okay, so we'll be sure to share all of your links that you gave us, and you guys should all go check out the event. And if you are here in Arizona, I'm in Arizona. That would be great. Yeah, I hope some of the listeners will come and experience the glory of Arizona in October, because it's fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Phoenix. It's been great to talk to you.
You too. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Bye.